Another little story here. Wauhatchie, 1958, of Yarb doctors and granny women. In the 1950s, Wauhatchie was 6 air miles and about 2 centuries from downtown Chattanooga. We lived in a 2-room house on Kelly's Ferry Road at the end of a hollow with a spring-fed branch running through our yard where we got our water. And we also had us a house out back up on the hill for other necessaries. At some point in those early years, my mother became ill and took to bed for a long time. As a result, my dad had to hire people to take care of us children. One of the women who took care of us during that time was Ola Beach. She was a widow and lived in a dilapidated old house in the next hollow over and was somehow related to some of the folks over there, but I never knew how. Ola was quite ancient. A tiny, bent-over, white-haired woman, deeply wrinkled skin, with pale, washed-out blue eyes and no teeth. I never understood a word she said. She wore these old, worn-out house dresses down to her ankles. Every morning, at the break of daylight, she would take the trail from the hollow through the woods from her house to ours and stay the day taking care of us, and then walk back about nightfall. Most everybody around there called her a granny woman or a Yarb doctor because she knew all about the plants and folk medicines that grew in the mountains, in the woods. Except some kids behind her back called her a witch under their breath. Now, I never did that. My mom and daddy would have taken my hide off for being disrespectful. I called her ma'am. Nonetheless, I was a little bit afraid of her, and it kept me on my toes. During this period, I also got sick. They took me to the doctor in Chattanooga, and he treated me with all kinds of antibiotics for pneumonia. The more he treated me with different drugs, the sicker I got. Turned out, I learned decades later, I did not have pneumonia, but histoplasmosis, a fungal lung disease caused by exposure to bat manure in the surrounding caves. As the weeks passed, I became weaker and weaker. Finally, Ola decided to take matters into her own hands. One morning, she showed up with a foul-smelling onion poultice, and without saying anything to my parents, proceeded to smear the stinking mess on my chest, covering it up with a hot, damp cloth. Then, as if she couldn't make things any worse, she pulled out an even more foul-smelling little leather aspidity bag filled with some kinds of nasty herbs which she tied around my scrawny neck. I did not know about my disease, but I was pretty sure the cure was about to kill me. Who knows if the treatment worked, but very rapidly I recovered. My sudden recovery was probably much to do with the hardening of my opinion that if I didn't get better soon, that foul-smelling mess off of me, I was going to certainly die. Upon recovery, I decided to keep my distance from Ola, witch or no witch, Yarb doctor or not. Decades long later, after I left Chattanooga, I visited the house where I grew up and walked the overgrown trail to the adjoining holler. No sign of Ola or her cabin, and I suspect traditional folk herb doctors are equally long distance a thing of the past. Thank you.